With Spooky Month coming up, I wanted to highlight some awesome horror-themed TTRPG stuff, so I'm starting with a personal favorite, Free League's investigative Nordic horror RPG, Vaesen. You can check out my full review in the doodad up here, but this review is for those of you stepping behind the screen to figure out where to start with mysteries. I have read every Vaesen book front to back for this video, and I've got to get into spoiler territory for most of these to be able to talk about them. Please don't ruin basically every official mystery for yourself unless you're super certain you're stepping behind the screen here. Once I get through the book buying order, I'm going to nearly immediately start spoiling. I'm also going to have content warnings visible the entire time, but I don't want it to be this like big dramatic thing in the video. I just want to be able to speak frankly about these topics and the mysteries. Just be aware that we're going to briefly mention some pretty heavy topics with this horror game, and like every Vaesen adventure features death and violence. They also lean into child death, harm to children, and religious persecution more often than not, so just be aware that we're going to be talking about that as well. If those topics are lines for you, there's tons of other RPGs out there, and I hope you find the right one. Such as my TTRPG, Vagabond Pulp Fantasy, which is now currently crowdfunding over on Gamefound. It's a brand new D20-based system that you can see dozens of hours of play here on YouTube.
What's the energy we're bringing into
is
this
Mercury in retrograde
dungeon? Are we trying to like shoot some people, perhaps, or
wait,
do we fuck with them, or like? Did we come here for murder?
Wait, I just realized, Nanny Goo, what are you doing all the way up? Oh, because you don't have control of your character. Deficient, why didn't you say something?
Nanny Goo can't see shit.
Hundreds of hours of design live streams, and a fantastic character building guide from my buddy KedHub. It supports guided, solo, or co-op play, and it's compatible with all old-school, basic, expert derivative material. I designed the system to take as much of the load off the Game Master as I possibly could, while still allowing for modern TTRPG character expression. The link to all this is going to be down in the description, and I'd seriously appreciate it if you could help me bring my dream fantasy dungeon crawler to print. As of right now, there's 5 official mystery books: A Wicked Secret, Seasons of Mystery, Mythic Britain and Ireland, and Lost Mountain Saga. There's also a starter mystery in the core rulebook, which means that there's 17 official mysteries. Coincidentally, that's the same number of pronunciations people claiming to be Swedish have given me for Vaesen. The books are usually multiple standalone scenarios that can be slotted in wherever you like in a campaign, but Lost Mountain Saga does have a central campaign adapted from the podcast it gets its namesake from. I'm only including 2 of the mysteries there that aren't as reliant on the central campaign, since I think the majority of GMs are just looking for standalones. After getting the Vaesen core rulebook, you should decide if you want to run the game in Sweden, Great Britain, or Ireland. If you choose to go with Great Britain or Ireland, pick up Mythic Great Britain and Ireland for obvious reasons. Not only do you get the setting and the society's backstory there, you're also getting 3 adventures that are great starters with unique situations and mystery types to play. If you decide to stick to Sweden, start with A Wicked Secret. The 4 mysteries here are fantastic, and each is distinct in its theme, situation, and pace to the mystery. After that, pick up Seasons of Mystery to round out an entire campaign. If you really want to lean in on the Nordic themes, Lost Mountain Saga actually gets more into the territory of familiar Norse mythology, with 2 of the mysteries we'll be talking about here. Okay, so now that you know the order, let's just talk about the rankings. When I was coming up with this list, I tried to focus on 5 aspects of each. Number 1, its theme. How well does it sell Vaesen's core themes of tradition versus modernity? Number 2 is the situation. How well does it sell the situation to justify the involvement of a group of supernaturally enhanced investigators? 3 is the style. How well does it sell Vaesen's aesthetic themes of mythological folk horror? Number 4 is going to be the structure. How well is the scenario conveyed in the mystery structure, and does it do anything interesting with Vaesen's mystery format? Number 5 is just going to be my own personal bias to help break ties. This is like super subjective, and it might just come down to whether or not I like the Vaesen in it. Okay, now is the time for spoiler territory, so the badge and content warnings are going up now. Use the chapters down below, the timeline to skip around if you'd rather not hear about the subject matter being discussed. Pretty much every adventure here is going to have a content warning for death and violence, so just be aware of that. With that out of the way, let's start with number 14. The Devil on the Moor has the party investigating machines breaking down and a weird phantom at the Grimstead Ling. Engineers are attempting to revitalize the area's fertility with new steam-powered machines, and the locals want these engineers to respect the old pagan traditions. There's a twisted tragedy that unfolds as an old journal is found that sicks an undead spirit child known as a myling on whoever possesses it. It all honestly kind of feels like a hybrid of The Ring and that quest in The Witcher with the pug-faced fetus monster. Despite being a good introduction to Vaesen's secret and ritual mechanics, this one loses me a bit with just how heavily child death is featured, potentially forcing the party to kill the myling and even handle the corpse of a dead baby. Even ignoring the seriously heavy themes, the mystery can be resolved with an arguably decent outcome if the party just doesn't do anything, since the myling could be appeased if it can just kill whoever possesses the journal. The mystery tries to fix this in the confrontation with a scene that sort of arbitrarily forces them to engage with the situation, which I'm just personally kind of not a fan of. The mystery is absolutely runnable, but I just don't see myself getting a lot of mileage out of it. Now, the pre-baked scenario in the core rulebook is A Dance of Dreams, which is oddly one of the darkest ones out of the entire Vaesen portfolio. It's a sort of locked room ghost story involving a former member of the society that's come back as a revenant and takes place in an inn where the owner is revealed to be physically abusive to his daughter and who previously abused his wife. The whole affair feels a bit tastelessly edgy at times, with the subplot that doesn't feel like it really needs to be there. These things aren't exactly unfamiliar to horror, but the execution and necessity is a little bit questionable, especially for an introduction scenario. There's also a possible outcome where the PCs are forced to kill a lot of innocent people, including a child, and potentially have to dodge murder charges without narrative support written for what happens there. I wouldn't recommend this as a starter scenario, especially when there's at least 6 others I think handle the horror elements a bit better than this one. Now, I would never call this one bad. In fact, Vaesen has a really good track record with just how quality the mysteries actually are. It's just that I kind of find that, like, if it has a hard time justifying why those darker elements are there, it just kind of feels a bit like, I don't know. So I know that we're at 12 of 14 here, but just so you all know, my ratings from here until the 7th place were within 0.1 points of each other, with this one scoring a 7.7. These ones on the lower end of the ranking would still be great scenarios, but Vaesen has so many incredible ones that the ones that are just kind of good still have to go somewhere. And this one's going to be The Song of the Falling Star, which is our first entry from A Wicked Secret. It features Vaesen's more traditional take on trolls with a bit more of a magical shapeshifter vibe. The PCs are sought out by Hugo von Kaiserling, a German astronomer who brought his wife Agnes and their newborn son Edward on a trip to study craters in Sweden. Recently, Agnes lost her sanity and took the newborn to a sauna in the middle of the night to drown him. She gets locked away in a sanatorium, and the father goes to visit her only friend in the village, the priest, to ask for his opinion. What caused Kaiserling to contact the society is that the village priest actually agreed with Agnes's actions and recommended an exorcism for the child. What's uncovered in the mystery is that Hugo is in possession of a musical instrument that's sacred to the group of nearby trolls, being nearly enthralled by the thing. Angered by this, the trolls swapped out the Kaiserling child for a changeling, and it's possible that this scenario could actually wind up with the party having to, resort to killing what appears to be a newborn child. The scenario does a great job with its faction play, and the initial sell is extremely interesting with that one single twist of the priest's opinion. It's also super evocative of its Nordic folk themes, but I'm sure you're already seeing a pattern here with my feelings towards harm to children in RPG stories. If it's happening off-screen, that's one thing, but I have a hard time with heavy on-screen features of it, especially when harming that child might be something that the players are forced to do. Now, I can absolutely appreciate the kind of horrific position it puts the players in, and I wouldn't ask Free League to change their vision, but for me, it's a bit much. A Dance with Death is the first scenario in Seasons of Mystery, and I think it's a good example of what I would call a weaker scoring situation. The party's called to investigate 2 cows drowning in the town of Foodle. The events around the drowning are a bit strange, but nothing that I felt like warranted calling in the Ghostbusters. The truth of the situation involves a neck, a fiddle-playing water spirit that can supernaturally charm others to do its bidding. The neck made a bargain with a local fiddle player, enhancing his talent under the agreement that he delivers the neck human sacrifices. The cows were meant to be some sort of a compromise, but of course the neck wants to chew on people meat. Once the party goes through enough small-town gossip, it's pretty clear the guy who plays fiddle is at the center of it all, but there's another NPC who the neck is manipulating that does give this a less obvious point of contention in the story. This one basically stacks the dominoes up for the players to knock over, and it's probably fantastic for more social roleplay-oriented tables. It's not complex, and it's light on the darker tones, so it's well suited for newer players, but I do think it could use a bit more strange to the initial selling pitch to really justify itself. It also feels more like a trip to the old world, since the ideas of industrialization pushing back against the old ways just isn't really present. It's a fine detour from the standard rhythm of Vaesen's themes, but that's about it. At number 10, we have the first entry from Mythic Great Britain and Ireland, the Hampstead Group. The party's asked to check out the disappearance of a man in an artist's colony. Actually, that's kind of about it. It's straightforward and incredibly obvious that they're dealing with a shape-shifting Vaesen acting as the leader of the colony. The only trick is ending her and getting closure on the man's disappearance before she skips town or kills the party or NPC who brought the party in on the situation. I promise I didn't get lazy in scripting this one, it's just not that deep. Not a lot of heavy themes, there's just a few moments in the narrative where it lets you get a bit loose with your GM skills and getting a bit brutal if you want. From there, we have A Winter's Tale from Seasons of Mystery. This scenario is unique in that it isolates the player characters on the arrival stage and gets them stuck on their way to a gathering of paranormal enthusiasts. It also features one of the coolest little Easter eggs, with Supernatural's Dean and Sam Winchester showing up as Samuel and Daniel Campbell, paranormal investigators from Winchester, England. This one breaks the conventions of Vaesen's mystery format by throwing them into a scenario without a clue as to what the actual scenario is. There isn't information given in the preparations phase, which means that they're literally getting a cold start. What happens is a sort of Hateful Eight situation where the strangers are stuck together in a space where a deadly mystery unfolds. But the increasingly deadly cold and paranoia from the NPCs causes friction, and the group has to figure out how to appease Anissa at the center of this before everyone freezes to death. Initially, the break away from the standard format and heavier content warnings made me reluctant to recommend this as a starter, but the heavy stuff is veiled, and I've heard about this one being run favorably at conventions, so I'll probably give this one another read in a few months to see if my perspective changes. I would recommend this one, but probably not as a starter, maybe something as a shakeup, maybe 4 or 5 mysteries into a campaign. Our first one from Lost Mountain Saga is The Prince and the Witch, a story that happens during the Valvorg Festival to celebrate spring. This one takes place in the society's home city of Uppsala, where a secret order claiming to be descendants of Freya is licking its wounds after being thwarted by a lindworm. Their leader plotted to kill and eat it in order to gain magical powers, but the lindworm tricked her out of her prized possession, a necklace that she claims to be the Brinksaman. I think this one has a pretty interesting little mini exploration sort of structure, and the more linear progression makes me think it's going to be a bit easier for GMs to run if they haven't really gotten familiar with Vaesen's mystery format, but like, I don't know, I'm also a big preacher of like trial by fire with practice, really. Kind of throw you into the deep end to get you more familiar with the thing than kind of a tutorial in a way. I don't know, I've got some weird conflicts there. I do really like this one. Again, I probably wouldn't recommend it as a starter, but maybe it is an ideal starter, but yeah. Old Meg is coming in at number 7, appearing in Mythic Great Britain and Ireland. When a young woman goes missing after a fight with a love interest, she unknowingly performs the correct ritual to revive a Vaesen that immediately tears her asunder. The killing is blamed on her suitor, who's imprisoned and sentenced to be hanged. To add to the chaos, it's May, and the entire town just got hit with a brutal frost snap. The party's brought in while the town's on the brink of chaos, as livestock is found mutilated in the same manner, but the police are refusing to continue their investigation. They feel like they have their man, and they're stubbornly set on punishing him. Townsfolk are taking sides in a family feud that erupts over this whole situation, and it's the party's job to uncover what happened before the whole place burns to the ground. At the heart of this one is a hag, and Vaesen's take on the hag is a more brutal force of nature like an ogre mage or like some magical bear, instead of the cartoonish witches that haunt the monster manuals of your typical dragon games. This is a deep and complex situation with great faction play. However, its increased mental load on the GM and more difficult confrontation with the hag makes me hesitant to recommend it until you've had at least a few sessions under your belt. I also kind of felt like the random moment of child mutilation was a little bit out of pocket, but, you know, fairy's gonna fairy. The Night's Owl clocks in at number 6, putting it in 3rd place from A Wicked Secret. This time, a new hotel is causing a fuss with its co-ed bathing policy and the bohemian art scene developing around it. The hotel was apparently built on a ley line or something because it also attracts the attention of a group of aspiring witches who stay at the hotel. The party's brought in after the owner of the hotel goes missing, but a twist is thrown on the mystery format when the person they're traveling to see winds up getting literally disassembled by some unknown monster moments before they meet. The mystery unravels pretty quickly just from exploring various locations, which is great because there's some pressure to resolve this situation ASAP. The boss in this mystery is a new one for this book, a fucked up porcupine pig hybrid called a Glosson. It gets mechanically stronger by eating people with magical power, which equates to it getting an additional d6 to all its rolls. It has some pretty easy weaknesses to exploit, like just standing up on top of a set of stairs, but the mystery structure and power escalation makes it a tough recommendation for a starter. Slot this one a few sessions in, and you'll naturally feel the story's variations as a welcome shakeup. The Lantywheel incident takes the number 5 spot, making it my pick for the best scenario from Mythic Britain and Ireland, which I just realized I've been calling Mythic Great Britain and Ireland this entire video. Hey Taron, we could reshoot the whole thing to fix that one problem? Hell no we don't. Britain and mining have a notably tense and ancient relationship, making it a natural fit thematically for Vaesen's typical tradition versus industrialization core. In the Lantywheel incident, a stubborn new priest shuns the pagan traditions around the mine and is particularly displeased with the fact that people can't take Christian symbols within. He decides that this place must just be the den of all evil and marches his congregation in to have service one Sunday. Not even 5 minutes into the sermon, the mine seems to turn on the people and caves in. The people are rescued, with the only injury being the priest's broken leg, but that one simple injury begins to give merit to centuries of superstitions. The only thing that kind of disappointed me about this one is that it didn't involve the rescue of the people trapped in the mine. This sounds kind of odd, but like, as I was reading through this one, I couldn't help but think about how much more tense and natural a countdown and catastrophe that would have been over kind of what's in here. It also would have immediately set this one apart from multiple Vaesen mysteries, but I can kind of tell how the Vaesen involved wouldn't really want the church trapped inside. I don't know, it's tricky, weird, all that, but it doesn't count against the scenario. It's just that the printed path does kind of fall into a fairly bog standard Vaesen mystery format. It's good at what it does, and I guess I'm just going to have my own bias there. The titular adventure for A Wicked Secret starts our real standouts at number 4. This one starts out as a standard murder mystery involving a Vaesen that gets bias points for me as a personal favorite. Dude, I love the church crim. I don't know what it is. This undead cat thing is just so fucking cool. The party's really set up for success by being connected to an NPC almost immediately who has a lot to hide. The town they're investigating is thrown into chaos as a land purchase goes sideways after the murder that brought the party here. The faction play is multifaceted and it follows the mystery format to a T. There's red herrings thrown in to get some disagreement going for roleplay, and the situation is kept fairly PG-13 overall. The only thing keeping me from saying this has to be the default starter is that the catastrophe immediately pushes a hard line that comes up with a lot of adult TTRPG players, as it involves a child getting their throat slit in front of them. You could always opt to just have the Vaesen come in before that happens and cause chaos instead, but just be aware this is a thing. Where the Sun Dies shines as my third favorite scenario, as it introduces one of the most unique situations, settings, and cells of Vaesen's themes. It opens as a worried Norwegian police commissioner seeks the society to help with the situation at the island municipality of Veroya. The harbor village of Sorland has stopped communicating with Norway, and the last rescue attempt was lost, leaving only a single man from the rescue party found frozen to death. The party is tasked with traveling to Veroya and gets a haunting cinematic on the journey there as polar night sets in, marking the last daylight this corner of the world will see for 6 months.
Look around! It's a beautiful day in sunny Reykjavik at 20 minutes past 3 o'clock!
They arrive to see the surrounding sea as a massive ice shelf and discover Sorland left a frozen waste. It turns this investigative horror into a nearly survival horror scenario, with the locations all providing situations that sell Vaesen in a way that I don't think the top 2 even contend with. It's pure dread terror with a central Vaesen of epic scale. This dying sun is a shining star for Lost Mountain Saga. I hate that I wrote that in that script. We're just going to keep going. As much as I hate that pun that I wrote for this script, I'm stoked to see what Eleanor De Lorenzo writes for standalones in the future of Vaesen. The Silver of the Sea from A Wicked Secret is Vaesen's strongest early campaign scenario, period. It comes from the pen of Year Zero engine designer and CEO of Free League, Tomas Arenstam, who just flexes his roleplay scenario writing chops all over the place here. Silver of the Sea doesn't force the game master to subconsciously plant tension and paranoia. It comes from the situation and the environment. We open up with a letter from the priest Oscar Udgren beseeching the society to accompany him to Wrecker Isle. The Isle is a successful herring saltery near Fjallbacka and is known to be a den for drunkards, thieves, and all other manner of debauchery. Udgrin's mentor made a missionary trip out to the Isle some weeks ago, and his body was shortly found washed ashore at Fjallbacka with a gunshot wound to the head. The coroner wrote the cause of death off as a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but Udgrin refuses to accept this answer and needs the party's help to confront Wrecker Isle's owners. The party is dropped into a pit of snakes here, and the mermaid is a fantastically unexpected horror monster. There's a path toward a TPK here, but it can also be easily massaged out just by having the party wash ashore in Fjallbacka instead of dying to this kraken. The situation isn't particularly complicated, the faction play is easy to understand, and the players are all going to feel their skills have a moment to shine. A decade from now, I really believe Vaesen fans are going to admire the Silver of the Sea in the same way that D&D fans admire the Sunless Citadel or White Plume Mountain. Okay, so Vaesen fans probably already know what's coming up here at number 1. My pick for the best Vaesen mystery so far has to go to Fireheart from Seasons of Mystery. This is another one from Tomas Arenstam, and it's something I can only describe as a beautiful curtain call to a Vaesen campaign that drives home every theme spectacularly with truly epic stakes and circumstances. The backstory begins sometime in the 10th century when the pagan woods of Smalandia were besieged by a dragon. Legends say an army fought back against the dragon, allowing a powerful shaman to seal it away. Fast forward to the mid-1800s, 2 brothers stumble upon its lair and find a hoard of gold. They also found the dragon and ran away in terror before it woke from its slumber. A decade later, after the family was on the brink of poverty, the older brother went back to the cave and stole enough gold from the hoard not to just save his family, but establish an ironworks on the Heron Lake. They began scraping iron ore from the lake, but doing so awoke the dragon from its slumber. Now, drought leaves Smalandia a mostly barren waste. Heat waves and wildfires cause locals to leave the area, with most emigrating to America. A wedge is driven between the Arenstam brothers as the elder is enchanted with dragon sickness. This greed turns the ironworks into a place of brutality and anger, and an evangelical woman named Beata Gideon's daughter latches onto the older brother, igniting a religious fervor within him. The society is brought in by the younger Arenstam brother, who wants to try and bring the family back together. The suddenness of the drought, the change in his brother, and the cult-like devotion to Beata all seem connected, and he needs the society's help in figuring out what's happening. There is a fantastic closure to every character arc here, and consideration in the aftermath for every potential outcome. The countdown has an epic cinema to it, and the whole affair feels like it delivers on every thematic beat of Vaesen's narrative core and mirrors in Nordic mythos. The Arenstam brothers and their ironworks being reminiscent of the dwarves Brock and Sindri and their magical blacksmithing. There might also be some kind of tie-in with Beata's true backstory and maybe Sigurd and Brynhild, but I'm not sure, and it kind of feels like I'm going down a tinfoil hat line of thought with that. But anyways, I adore Fireheart, not as an opener, but as a closure. Start a campaign out with something else I've talked about, wrap it up here. It's a fantastic bookend, a perfect 10 out of 10, and by itself would make Seasons of Mystery worth the price of admission alone. All right, so wrapping this thing up, I've been on an adventure scenario binge the last few months, and I want to hear your favorites. Leave it down in the comment section below, because for some reason I've read like over 3,000 pages of adventure material in the last 2 months, and I'm still starving for more. While you're here, go follow the Vagabond crowdfunding page and check out the Land of the Blind storefront if you're looking to expand your TTRPG horizons. I try to drop all kinds of TTRPG stuff throughout the month, so subscribe and check out my Patreon for more news there. Speaking of, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon sponsors. Thank you all so much for helping me keep the lights on around here and coffee in my blood. You all are absolute heroes. Also, go check out more Free League stuff that I'll link down in the description. They're a killer company, and they've actually really helped out a lot here on the channel. Like, the whole 5-room dungeon jam just would not have happened without Free League. But anyways, thank you all so much for being here. I hope you all are staying safe, staying healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.